Bryan, you've got quite a large group here to hear what you have to say today. So I think without any further comment, I can turn it right over to you if you're ready to go live.
Yes, sir.
All right, the floor is all yours.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me share my screen. Let's get into it. I want to preface this by saying Cyclone has been around forever, and we probably have some power users on here, and then we probably have some people that have never used Cyclone. And so I'm going to be short and sweet, and hopefully give you some good nuggets of information, but I'm probably not going to go too deep into all the various tools. So just to give you the right expectation. So just to be clear, Cyclone, we now call it Cyclone Core, has been around for like over 20 years. Cyclone Register 360 is a program that is simplifying those workflows and replacing Cyclone, and will eventually completely replace Cyclone. And we are getting more and more tools from Cyclone Core into Cyclone Register 360 all the time. And Register 360 will be the future. And the workflows are much simpler and more user-friendly. And we are now on version 2022.1.0, which was dropped yesterday. So just some background on that. Cyclone Register 360 is a registration tool. So the tool is meant to take point cloud data, scan data, and merge those together. We call that registering the data. And then from there, we like to kick our point clouds out into some kind of extraction software. On this slide, you see the arrows where I have it either kicking out to CloudWorks or kicking over to Cyclone 3DR, which are softwares that are designed to extract the data you want, or generate the surface that you want, or do the modeling you want, and then kick it into a CAD platform. Like I have Open Roads on there and Civil 3D, to do your designing from. So that's what it's all about. Today, we're just going to talk about registration in Register 360. So here's why. Today, I want to talk about combining or registering or merging unstructured point clouds with traditional terrestrial laser scanning data. Unstructured meaning that the clouds are just, I don't know how to describe it, they're just there, right? These will be the kind of LAS, LAZ files that you get from photogrammetry from Pix4D, from your SLAM scanners, BLK2Go, mobile mapping, your Pegasus, TRK systems. Those are unstructured, and it doesn't have the same amount of metadata. Now, traditional terrestrial scanning has more metadata going on in the background, and we have all these tools, and we have to have a way to combine them, right? So whether it's on the ground scanning or a multi-station, a total station that scans, or whether it's a drone, like we need to have a way to combine them. And another reason would be there's differences in accuracy. You might fly a drone and use photogrammetry on your dirt work, but on your hardscapes, your critical things, a spillway on a dam, you're going to want to scan that as opposed to using a drone. Another reason would be drones are more efficient, scanning's more accurate, and shadows, right? Shadows both impact terrestrial scans and aerial scans. So you might use both tools because of shadows and environmental. There's a lot of reasons why we want to combine this data. And up until now, you've kind of been locked into one method. And that method boils down to using everything on the same coordinate system, the same northern descending elevations, the same X, Y's, and Z's. And you would do that by using common control points, common targets, your GCPs, your ground control points that are painted for the photogrammetry would also be the same points that you tie in, with your scanning targets. And that was about it. I mean, you could manually move things, translate, rotate things into place, but you couldn't do much more than that. Cyclone had Cyclone Core had some workflows, but nothing that was really user friendly. But now with, since the BLK to go and the SLAM stuff, Leica said we need a more robust solution in Register 360. And so we're going to incorporate non-structured scan data. So here's an overview of the process of registering. Okay. When you register, you first have to import the data, the raw data off the tool itself. After that, you create links between data. So if I have scan points from the ground and scan points from the air, you're going to create links between those two. And there's different ways to do that. There is using targets, matching the targets. There's a cloud to cloud, which is looking at both sets of point clouds and geometry between them to align them. And then there's a split screen, which is where you have on one side, you will have one set of data. On the other side of your screen, you'll have another set of data, and you will click common points between those. And then the last is visual alignment, which is kind of the same thing as split screen, but instead of picking individual points, you're looking at one point cloud in one color and the other point cloud in a different color. And we're just visually going to look for the geometry that's best. And then in the end, you optimize, and optimizing is like the same thing as doing a overall cloud to cloud registration. It uses an algorithm to do that. I just want to make one point that I meant to make in the beginning. At this point, the algorithm for cloud-to-cloud registration is more powerful in Register 360 than Cyclone Core. Cyclone Core has a lot of other great features, but for those of you users out there on the latest version, just let it be known, Cyclone Register 360 now has a more powerful algorithm for cloud-to-cloud. So anyway, back to it. After you create your links, you will finalize them. You will apply your control, put it on your coordinate system, your survey points, whatever, QC it and export it, and that's it. So let's get into it. So I tend to be long-winded, so I got a video, and I'm just going to kind of narrate what this looks like, and the step-by-step will make a lot more sense with this. So first off, you need to import your data. So I'm going to go to the import tab. I'm going to browse to my files. That screen didn't pop up, so that's why it's not there in my screen recording. Simple as that. I grabbed an LAS file, and hit import. At this point on the screen, on the left side, that point cloud was derived from photogrammetry from a drone, and that's what I just imported. On the right side, you have the red dots. Those are individual scan setups from a P40. So the lines connecting them, those are your links. So I initially brought in that photogrammetry cloud. I have rotated it to match the same rotation. I'm looking at the geometry, and I'm now translating it into place and doing a best fit visually. Okay, so now I'm selecting the first suggested link. So if you look on the screen, the dot in the middle was my photogrammetry cloud. The other one was my scan cloud. Had a gray line between them. That was suggested. Now I'm in the visual alignment. The blue point cloud is my photogrammetry point cloud. The orange point cloud is my terrestrial data. And all I'm doing is visually aligning those as best I can, and I'm rotating them. And I'm really utilizing the building in this case to get the best possible alignment and rotation I can. So I'm done now, and I just, from a bird's eye view, now I'm gonna adjust it vertically. So what you wanna see with this is kind of a blend of the orange and blue points. And when I have that blended, that's how I know it's aligned well. And I did the plan view, now I did the vertical, and now I optimized that. So after I optimized it, I hit join and optimize, and it gave me this result. So it's telling me that I had 48% overlap of my points between the two clouds on the link, and that in that I had an average of 10 millimeters between all of those points difference, and then I have a chart that kind of reflects that same thing on here. So let's keep going. Now I'm going to make a second link. So I did this by selecting a different scan setup, holding down Control, selecting my photogrammetry scan setup, and then I hit, visual alignment. So now I'm in the alignment, and I'm just kind of inspecting it because it already looks pretty good after my first link. It looks really good here. So I was looking in 3D just to see that, but I felt like I could improve it just a little bit. So I'm checking all these building corners, and right there, I saw that I could move that blue photogrammetry cloud just a little bit. And I hit optimize. Now I'm going to check it vertically, and I think things look good vertically. So I think I'm going to just leave it and hit join and optimize. Boom. And there was my result for that one. Okay, next way, we're going to do this with the split screen. So I've selected my photogrammetry cloud, I selected my terrestrial with a control button, and then I hit split screen. Oh, did I just lose PowerPoint?
We still got you, Brian.
Is the video still playing?
Yeah, video's still playing.
Okay.
We're seeing contours on one side and an elevation map or DSM on the other side.
My screen totally dropped out. So give me 1 second to figure this out.
We're looking at your master view, not your video view. There we go. And you should be able to, there you go.
Okay.
That's about
So
where
there's a split screen. I changed the view, so I'm looking at heat maps because and this is a pro tip. The heat map gives you more contrast, and it helps you to identify kind of key points. So I'm looking at that concrete corner of the building as kind of a good geometry point. So I'm selected on one side, selected on the P40 data, and I'm going to move around and look for another point. Because we lost some time, I'm just going to skip ahead. Really, you need 3 common points, right? Ultimately, I just went 3 common points, and then you hit create link. So on that, I used the stairs, and then on this, I used the roof, and hit link. When you're done creating your links, you just apply control. So now I've added my survey control into it. That's what the yellow was. And then here's my results. And this, I use the true slicer tool, and each individual scan was colorized in a different color. And really, typically, I'd be looking a lot closer to find the slices and the different colors to see how well it did. So that was my final result. And here's just a fly through. I'm not worried about it. So, but you can see the P40 data is gray. The colorized data is the photogrammetry data, which I don't know if I mentioned. The scanner I used was a P40. The drone I used the Autel Evo 2 RTK to collect the photogrammetry data. So moving on, just wanted to show you the results to help paint a picture of why this is valuable. I took that data and I pushed it to, again, another Cyclone product, but this is a different one. This is Cyclone 3DR. So in 3DR, I colorized the scans so that the photogrammetry data is blue, the P40 data, terrestrial scan data is the gold color. And I just cut some cross sections. And so just to give you an idea of how well it blended together. And The other key point is in this registration, I did not use common aerial targets, right? There was no common aerial targets to my scanning targets. This is all cloud to cloud based. Not that that is bad. It's not bad to use those methods, but that wasn't what we wanted to illustrate. We wanted, for your workflows to illustrate the cloud to cloud workflow that Register 360 has. So those are just me cutting through the cross sections, and you can see the smooth blend of all the data between the gold and blue. You also see some areas where there's more blue data and less gold data because the scanner had a shadow, and the results, honestly, I was very happy with. If I could add another pointer, I would say, if at all possible, clean your photogrammetry data as best you can first, eliminate as much noise as you can and crop everything on the outside that you don't want to see. You want to work with less data, you want all the data you need, but you want to eliminate anything that's sloppy or extra so that you're only working with core data. It'll just make everything more simple for you in Register 360. So benefits of using this workflow, as opposed to picking a couple of common targets, you're looking at the entire cloud. You're using an algorithm to cloud register these data sets that's using all of your data rather than half a dozen or whatever. So I think I got better results. You can include targets. I think it's potentially a faster workflow. I love this workflow for blending your data, and there's more benefits as well. So that's
Bryan, did you want to run your second video there, or did you already? Was that second piece that you showed there with the combined pieces?
So that was it. That was the
okay.
combined.
All right, I thought something a little longer there. Well, folks, we're good for questions. If you got some questions, this is a great time to start putting them in the chat window that's there. Bryan, I'm curious, since you've been working with LiDAR, so aerial scanning as well as terrestrial scanning, as well as point clouds from photogrammetry, are there any tips and tricks you can give folks that should be applied to, say, the flight component of anything they're going to be using to register with terrestrial-based point clouds?
Yeah, I like to fly a double grid, so I'm collecting more images, and then when I process, I sometimes will do 5 or 6. There's the option where you can select number of images per point created, and sometimes I'll do 5 or 6, and that really helps me to weed out bad points. Sometimes I'll eliminate them. I'll turn off multi-scale. That'll help. And even if you have an RTK drone, which I do suggest everyone run an RTK drone, you can create the same kind of results with a non-RTK, but you don't get the efficiency. RTK gives you much more efficiency with, not having to add as many targets. You still have to add targets. I will say you still add targets because you want something to constrain it. But I think it's much more efficient. You can use less targets. If you run a project that's in RTK versus non-RTK, and then you compare them, there is a difference. So just start out with the best data you can on the photogrammetry side before you start comparing it with your terrestrial scan data.
So Bryan, we have a question here from one of our attendees. Does Register 360 still only use the cloud-to-cloud points within a specified distance from the single waypoint setup created after importing the LIS? Because in the older versions, you needed to create a couple of waypoints through the LIS file to incorporate better cloud-to-cloud registration points.
So no, as I understand it, and this might just be on this latest release. And if you didn't hear me before, we are on 2022.1. As I understand it, its algorithm is looking at everything. So, unless maybe I understand your question wrong. You initially only get the center point. You know what? That's what you were talking about. You initially only get that center point, but when you saw like the split screen workflow or the visual alignment, I am still utilizing everything in that cloud when I mesh them together. So hopefully that explains it better.
Okay. Eric, did that articulate the answer? Would that answer work for you? Put that in the chat window. That'll be great. Yeah. So all points from the LAS showed up in the visual alignment Is that correct, Bryan?
Yep.
Okay. All right, looks like that answers that for Eric. Anyone else? We've got time for, we basically have 2 minutes left that we can take any questions if there are any. I don't know if we've got any coming in over the Facebook side since we're also live out on Facebook right now. Bryan, Andrew is asking if you could briefly touch on how you added the control points here. Was this from a GPS setup or was this, or are these visual? How are you adding the GPCs or GCP?
So the control points were, I shot those in with my GPS, GS18I, and those I had tied to targets, which I used in the P40 data. And so from the GPS side, I just exported, a CSV file, northern eastern elevation, import it into Register 360. And then it's really cool how Register 360 uses geometry now instead. So you literally just import it and then you right click on your bundle and you hit apply control. It automatically looks for the right geometry and the right targets and will add the control without having to, really sit and like select things. So, yep.
We have another question. Does the LAS file shift or does the LAS shift to align to the leveled P40 data or does it maintain its level after alignment?
So you can shift it. So it does shift to the P40 data, but you have different ways. There's different methods for controlling that. So I could shift my P40 data to my photogrammetry data instead, right? And that just depends on. Honestly, I need to show you in person. So there's different ways to do it and lock it in. I mean, you could lock in your registration on one and move the other. If you're using Cyclone Core, you're used to having a home world scan. Reg 360 doesn't have a home world scan, but instead, there's different ways of getting at it. This is how I can explain it.
Okay. And looks like that answered the question well. Thank you very much, Bryan. Well, folks, we're out of time. We are looking forward to having you at our next Lunch and Learns. We've got quite a few of them scheduled, as you probably saw on the Eventbrite page. We did take about a month hiatus due to a very rigorous trade show and travel schedule for most of our team, but we're now back online. We're grateful for Bryan to being able to take the time today and share some of the new features with you. We are going to be having another session on Cyclone products with Matt Kowalski, and it's all the new Cyclone features that were announced at the Hexagon conference just last week. And Bryan, you were down here with the crew at Hexagon. We're pretty excited to share with you all of the new features that are found in the Cyclone family. We've also got a couple coming up on microdrones and other LiDAR-based scanning systems. Stay tuned for a brand new drone line announcement with dual RTK. We're excited to tell you about in roughly a month from now. We've got Brady Reich coming in to be doing some information or some training for VDCs. So there's a lot happening. And then again, we've got all the information about the upcoming roadshow. And for those of you that didn't catch it, I'll paste it in one more time for you here out of the file. Whoops, there we go. And so you'll see our roadshow dates in there. If we're coming to an area near you, please make sure to register and show up. We're going to buy you a small lunch or at least some food and have you come spend, whatever part of the day you're willing to spend with us in these various cities. As we move across the Western states, we will be traveling with Reg 360 and the Cyclone family of products, as well as the new Leica BLK to fly drone, the microdrone MD1000HR. We'll have the Autel, and as I say, we've got a top secret drone we can't tell you about, but it's a very interesting dual RTK system that is NATO compliant. So we'll have a lot more to say about that in about another 30 days. So with that, folks, thank you again very much for attending. We look forward to seeing you at future Lunch and Learns. And until next time, be safe out there.